Hey guys, so the WoW devs have been making their rounds doing interviews with a ton of different people, and we've got a bunch of really interesting information coming out of it. But let's face it, who's got time to sit down and watch four 30-minute interviews, right? So for this video, I've gone over each of these interviews, and I'm kind of just going to be going over all of the useful and interesting information that I think you guys would like to hear. This is going to be a very audio heavy video. I'm just going to be throwing some footage of me playing classic WoW in the background. So if you guys are someone that just likes to listen to someone talk, this will be a great video for it. So before we begin, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with a friend. The first interview we'll be going over is one with Kalamazi and senior game designer at Blizzard, Graham Berger. Kalamazi's a content creator who writes the Wowhead guides for Warlocks. He's also just a really cool dude and provides a ton of insightful information on the Warlock class. So if you guys play Warlock, I would highly recommend you check out his channel. But these two sat down and talked about the Augmentation Evoker, so let's go over what was said. So with the Augmentation's initial design, the primary theme of Evokers is magic of the 5 dragonflights, right? They wanted to explore the rarely seen black dragonflight magic and delve deeper into the fascinating world of bronze time magic. The team also wanted to address the lack of support playstyle in the game and create a whole new spec to cater to that audience. The result? The Augmentation Evoker. When it comes to the learning curve for augmentation, one of the major goals is to make it incredibly approachable, with a high skill floor. The team wanted to provide a different perspective for damage dealers and appeal to a more altruistic player, such as a tank or a healer. While add-ons can be helpful for advanced players who want to have more control of perfect uptime, the base UI has additional support elements to track the important buffs like Ebb and Might. And of course, with a support spec, tuning is probably going to be a nightmare. So they said that balancing augmentation for different types of content can be quite challenging. However, the team has various tools at their disposal to address this. They can tune PvP separately from PvE, and abilities like Close as Clutchmates can easily be adjusted to 5-man content. Outlying metrics like key timers can also provide valuable insights for less experienced players. They also addressed the concerns about Augmentation Evokers replacing healers. They said that it's important to note that augmentation does not aim to replace healers, especially in Mythic Plus. The buffs provided by augmentation are intended to enhance the healer's capabilities, not replace their healing. The team is aware of this and will make further adjustments if necessary. The team's also implementing combat log hooks for augmentation's buffed damage, allowing sites and add-ons to attribute the damage correctly. While the possibility of adding combat log hooks to other support abilities is being discussed, the team considers most of these abilities as perks rather than core gameplay mechanics. They also address the class stacking concerns issue. The team initially intended to allow for multiple augmentation evokers in a group, even in 5-man content. Releasing augmentation mid-season allows them to observe the data between less experienced and more hardcore players using augmentation. The team aims to strike a balance where buffing allies feels impactful but not overwhelming. If necessary, adjustments will be made to ensure a fair playing field. And lastly, they mentioned solo play. So they said that augmentation is not only for group play, but it's also for solo players as well. It's going to offer significant survivability, and it excels in clearing enemies quickly with AoE abilities. So it's not going to be something that is going to be, super reliant on groups. You could definitely play augmentation by yourself and have no issues. And now we move on to the next interview, which was between Wowhead and senior game designer Graham Berger once again. When it comes to designing the Augmentation Evoker, the team initially experimented with Beacon of Light, which is a Holy Paladin mechanic. And basically it makes the specific player receive all of the buffs over time. However, they shifted towards a more automatic targeting system to ensure approachability and mitigate the burden of knowledge that is in selecting the best player to buff. This concept of automatic targeting may be expanded upon in future spells. And it sounds like the initial design of augmentation was pretty hard to do. The development of augmentation required a collaboration of multiple teams, including engineering, UI, and art. They worked on implementing new features like floating combat text for abilities such as Ebb and Might and Precedence. This feedback system allows augmentation players to receive real-time information about the stats gained by their targets, similar to how traditional damage or healing numbers are displayed. They also address the community perception and future plans. The team takes community perception and reaction into account when considering the addition of a new support spec to the game. Augmentation was the result of multiple factors aligning, and the future additions would likely meet similar criteria as well. It's a high bar to ensure alignment with the ongoing story and expansion themes. If a new spec were to be introduced, they would likely be added rather than change existing ones. When it comes to unique buffs and balance, Augmentation doesn't provide haste buffs due to the complexity and potential devaluation caused by stacking multiple haste buffs. Instead, the team explored more unique buffs that Augmentation could bring to the table. Balancing Augmentation was a significant challenge, as it needed to perform well in various types of content, from PvP to solo and raids. Target capping and the introduction of the closest clutch mates passive ability was among one of the solutions that they implemented. This next interview was with the Guildmaster from Liquid, Maximum, and he interviewed the Associate Game Director, Morgan Day, and Lead Encounter Designer, Michael Natalis. In this interview, they discussed the role of gear upgrades, very rare loot, private auras, and shorter boss encounters. Gearing in Season 2 was exceptionally fast, especially for high-end guilds like Liquid. The team aimed to create a system that unifies gear progression from different sources while providing an upgrade path for raiding. Although they achieved their goals, the rapid pace at which players finished gearing within the first few weeks felt too fast. The team intends to address this by ensuring a long trail of gear progression, allowing for more organic nerfs to smooth out the roadblocks over time. When it comes to the role of gear, gear plays a critical part in raiding tuning and progression. It enhances the promise of an RPG by allowing players to progress through encounters naturally. The team wants players to experience a sense of growth and improvement over time, rather than relying solely on encountering nerfs. Gearing up and becoming more powerful should facilitate smoother progression. Season 2 introduced very rare loot with specific adjustments. The team created interesting options that not everyone necessarily desired, diversifying the loot pool. They also adjusted the drop rates, making boss kills more impactful while reducing their frequency in caches or the vault. While it's too early to determine if very rare loot will continue in future expansions, the team believes it aligns with the goals and will continue making adjustments in Season 3. They also addressed weak auras. The team wanted players to engage more with the game world and communicate with each other rather than relying heavily on add-ons to solve encounter mechanics. While they are fine with additional information add-ons showing debuff lists, they are less keen on computational weak auras that guide players with markers and squares. Lessons learned from previous encounters, such as Neltharion, have led to a better understanding of the balance between player engagement and add-on usage. Now, here's something new for the game. They're adding a ping system. In patch 10.1.7, the team will be implementing a contextual ping system similar to popular MOBA games. This system will allow players to quickly and easily share information with their group directly in the game world. It's seen as an accessibility feature and a way to encourage players to communicate and potentially reduce the reliance on automatic weak auras. For me personally, I am super excited for addition to the game. I think a ping system is definitely something that has been needed in this game for a long time, and I just think when it comes to other games, ping systems are just a really good way for players to communicate without having to actually talk or type to each other. So this is going to be really cool. And it's going to be funny too, because you just know that in a 5-man group, if a DPS dies, a tank's just going to spam ? Ping on their body. So it's going to be great. They also talked about raiding and tanking. They said that tanks can be a singular point of a failure for a group. So the team is cautious about creating encounters that put excessive pressure on them, especially early in the raid. However, they do aim to provide opportunities for all roles to shine, and tanks often excel in movement and position mechanics. The team also emphasized that tank healing is an important aspect, and they strive to make tanks more self-sustaining players. Boss encounters in Season 2 were noticeably shorter, and the final boss, Salkarath, lasting 7.5 minutes. Inspired by encounters like Blackhand, the team aimed to create intense and execution-heavy fights within a shorter duration. However, they acknowledge that the need for a balance between shorter and longer encounters is needed. For Season 3, they are considering a shift towards a maximum of 10 minutes for boss encounters, with longer encounters potentially being split into multiple fights. And for me, this just automatically screams Galakrond. I still think we're gonna have a Galakrond fight at the end of the expansion. And yeah, it sounds to me like maybe the last 2 fights of a raid are gonna be like different phases of Galakrond. Like maybe the second to last fight will be, a 10-minute long fight where we're fighting him in the air or something. And then the final boss will just be, fighting him on the ground or something. And then this last interview was between Wowhead and game director Ian Hazzikostas, where they talked about mandatory raid specs, chase items, and possibly the rogue rework. They first go over the legendary evoker weapon and how players are frustrated with the drop rate of it. Ian basically says that currently there's no plans to make any adjustments, however that in the future they can possibly do some hotfixes to help the situation. They also highlight the importance of considering player psychology and community expectations while avoiding situations where people possessing a legendary item is basically like a required thing. And basically they're just saying that they don't think everyone that has the potential to get a legendary item should have it. I know everyone's kind of used to lately where, legendaries are handed out like candy. But, back during, vanilla BC Wrath, not everyone had a legendary item. And in my opinion, that's okay. They also talked about the legendary evoker weapon and how it currently rivals 480 item level weapons, and asked if there's any plans to adjust this power in the patch or in the future. Ian basically explains that they adjust the power of items prior to seasons to prevent them from being too central in later seasons. However, they note that the legendaries may be an exception to this philosophy, and he refers to the Sylvanas bow from Shadowlands as an example of a legendary weapon that players use for an extended period of time. And he acknowledges the challenge of balancing power expectations and expresses an understanding of the player concerns. They also talked about the possibility of implementing log hooks for spells like Wind Fury Totem, Chaos Brand, or Power Infusion in relation to the Augmentation Evoker, and they said that they don't currently have any plans to implement log hooks for those spells, and he wanted to clarify that the Augmentation Evoker is balanced around its contribution, while other examples like Wind Fury Totem or Chaos Brand are not the main focus of their related spec or class. They also talked about the idea of mandatory or raid-locked specs in the Mythic raid scene, and specifically mentioned hunters and shamans, which fight for limited spots because they really don't bring anything unique to the table. And Ian states that they're definitely mindful of the concern and actively monitor the composition of Mythic raiding groups. They aim to have optimal comps where all 20 slots are represented from different classes. And they mentioned that while some classes may bring some unique buffs, that they're striving to avoid the idea that specific classes are forced to be mandatory. They also talked about the idea that with the success of augmentation, if this is going to be a possible starting point and seeing if there's going to be more support classes in the future. And Ian basically says that as long as the Augmentation Evokers is a success, we'll definitely see more classes like this in the future. However, there are no current plans to change any of the current existing specs into a more support role. So basically the idea that we're going to be getting a rework for Discipline Priests to make them more supporty, that's not going to happen. But Ian here is basically all but confirming that, yeah, as long as Augmentation Evoker is a hit with the players, we're definitely getting a Bard class. They also talked about the rogue reworks, and Ian clarified that they're not going to be included in patch 10.1.5 as initially planned, and that they explained that the changes and reshuffling of development tasks can occur due to real-life situations, or for the need to reassign people for the right job. Either way, they basically said that they are sorry for the frustration and they're going to be coming later down the line. They also talked about the Warlock pet customization coming in this new patch and asked if we're going to be getting the similar treatment to other pet classes in the future. And they basically said that Warlocks were chosen as a starting off point due to how central of a role the class is, and that they've definitely are expressing their interest in community feedback and suggestions for expanding customization options to other classes, including the willingness to consider future additions. They also asked Ian about how he felt with the upgrade system and how it's gone so far. and asked why they added the myth track in 10.1.5. And he basically said that the upgrade system was initially implemented with a conservative approach to ensure that the high-end gear was still earned through challenging content. However, this approach unintentionally devalued Mythic Raid gear because players found that upgraded hero gear could reach similar item levels, making Mythic Raiding gear feel less worthwhile. To address this, the addition of the Myth track reinforces the best gear should be coming out of the hardest content, rather than from upgrades. As they move forward to the next season, they want to ensure that the upgrade system doesn't overshadow ongoing motivations and are considering tweaks to the overall rate of upgrades. The Flightstone ratio is also being re-evaluated to ensure that it remains meaningful for active players. The goal of giving players more agency in gearing and unifying upgrade systems across different content types have been a success and is viewed as a positive outcome. They also asked him about how he feels with the general chase item acquisition and mentioned things like the trinkets or very rare items. And he said that it's basically a delicate balance between the value of chase and the frustration of not obtaining a desired item. The goal is to have multiple chase items and a variety of rewards so that players can feel a sense of accomplishment even if they haven't obtained a specific item. The excitement and uncertainty of running a boss and seeing what item drops is part of the time-honored and compelling experience of the game. However, that they are aware that specific items should not feel essential or a make or break for certain specs at the highest levels of play. They want acquiring items to be exciting without making players feel disqualified if they don't have them. This requires a case-by-case evaluation, considering feedback, numbers, and results, and making adjustments to the items as necessary. And then they also asked him about how he feels with Mythic Plus for Season 2 with the affix being taken out. And he said that the developers are happy with Season 2's emphasis on dungeons and reduced focus on the affixes. It has addressed previous concerns about repetitive gameplay and provided a fresh experience with 8 new dungeons. While the absence of a seasonal affix is a loss, the team aims to reintroduce it in the future. Overall, the shift has been well received, with dungeons taking center stage and affixes playing a supportive role. And then the last question the interviewer asked Ian about was the giant sword sticking in Silithus. And of course, Ian playfully pretends that it doesn't exist. So that's pretty interesting. And that should do it for this video. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on all of this in the comment section below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, and like I said, subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and share this video with a friend. I think this is probably the longest video I've put out there, but I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on, length for videos, things like that. Do you guys enjoy these kind of longer videos, or do you guys like to just get my, 3 to 5 minute videos more often? Either way, I would love to do a mix of both because I think short form and long form content are both really fun to do. But either way, thanks again for checking out my video, and if you guys got this far in the video, I really appreciate you. And with that, we'll see you guys later.